Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Anderson. I teach philosophy, and today I want to talk about critical thinking. Critical thinking, as a class, usually combines a little bit of theory of knowledge with some practical guidance on how to reason well and how to avoid some common pitfalls. Now, the theory of knowledge part is really important. My thesis here is that knowledge is a result of labor. And it's only by understanding the labor that produces that knowledge that we can really grasp what that product is that we get. We tend to think that we know a lot of things, but we also think a few things about knowledge. For instance, we think that if you know something, that something is true, and you're never going to discover that it's false. Knowledge is an awfully black and white concept most of the time when we think about it. But when it gets down to investigating the world and discovering, right, investigating some aspect of reality, we find that the investigation is often not black and white, and that the conclusions that we walk away from are often subject to further evidence and further evaluation. But there are exceptions to this. Euclid's geometry, for instance, holds up. It holds up. We've got this whole book, this whole ancient book, that delivers us truth in a very black and white way. So how do we distinguish those things that we can really know and we never really have to revisit them from those things that we should be constantly looking to perfect or improve our access to them? I keep making this gesture. What is this about? Okay, let me tell you. This analogy, right? Analogy. Knowledge is the result of labor. I've got an analogy that has me thinking about this. I am a bit of an amateur astronomer. I've got a telescope or two that I like to take out in the backyard with the kids, look around. And, we focus in on some things. Sometimes I find myself looking straight through the thing I'm looking for. The Triangulum galaxy, for instance. It's supposed to be right next to, around the corner, as far as the night sky is concerned, it's right next to the Andromeda galaxy. It's easy to locate where it should be, but every time I try to look at it, I see nothing. And apparently, it's like so big I'm looking right through it. I can't fit it in here. Okay. The world, right? We occupy as an individual. You occupy about 80 years of time, 100 years of time. One's lucky, right? One lives one's whole lifespan. And in those 80, 100 years, exactly one location. So we've got, you can kind of track your progress. Where are you? Here I am in Florida. Here I am in France. Here I am in Michigan. Right? You can track your progress through your life. What you experience there, what you learn about through being there, is very small compared to the vastness of reality. It's very small. We can investigate any number of things. You want to know about the life of Abraham Lincoln. You want to know about Socrates. You want to know about the stars. You want to know about the Enlightenment. What even is such a thing? Can you point to it? You want to know about all these things. You put in the labor and you investigate. What are the methods? We'll talk about what methods. But what's the result? Well, it kind of depends on what the labor is, what the methods are. You're never going to try to investigate a historical question and walk away with confidence as if you were investigating a simple geometry question. Geometry is going to give you confidence. If you did this right, hey, I don't know why that's there, but confidence that if you did this right, the results are absolutely certain. You can hold on to it forever. History is very different. History, we're investigating the past, always through someone else's perspective, right? If we don't experience it ourselves, knowledge is really only shared by sharing symbols. Testimony is some kind of writing things down. All right, so as we go and investigate, we're investigating other people's symbols. We're never going to get certainty about that sort of thing, like we can get certainty about geometry or simple math. All right, so we're going to see what we can know. We're going to see how to investigate these different things, and what degree of confidence we get from that, what the result is. The resulting knowledge is not all the same. Geometric knowledge is very different from historical knowledge, very different from scientific knowledge, very different from the kind of thing you get exploring a timeless novel like Les Miserables, for instance. So we want to do a couple things. What I'm going to say here, I got a couple points to make. One thing that we're going to do as we engage in our, and try to improve our critical thinking abilities, is we're going to perform some analyses of the knowable. All right, an analysis. You're taking apart. An analysis of the knowable. You're going to take apart the whole range. Wait. You ever hear that there's two kinds of people in the world? We're doing an analysis of humanity. We're dividing it up to two kinds of people. You could do a real bad analysis where it's not comprehensive. You're missing things, There's two kinds of people in the world. The kind of people whose favorite color is yellow and the kind of people whose favorite color is blue. Oh, there we go. It's not true. Not true. It's not exhaustive. We're going to try to give a pretty exhaustive and actually multiple exhaustive analyses of the knowable and see what that tells us about how to pursue the truth. When someone says two kinds of people in the world, and they have a real exhaustive analysis, and someone else, I don't know, maybe kinds of people who get my sense of humor and kinds of people who don't. Yeah, two kinds of people in the world. Is that very insightful? No, I don't think so. But it's true, there's two kinds of people in the world. People with this sense of humor and people without it. I could also say there's two kinds of people in the world. People who have similar taste in music as me and people who don't. Is that also not a very interesting analysis, but notice those two analyses can sit side by side with each other, split the same people in the world into two different camps, and each be equally true. All right, so these analyses are not necessarily mutually exclusive. We're going to see Plato distinguishing between the sensible world, the world we experience through the senses, and the intelligible world, the world we experience by thinking about it. So two kinds of knowledge there. There's the knowledge we get from experience, the knowledge we get from thought. How do we do that? We'll see other analyses of the knowable. Okay, to what end? Next thing I want to present, I want us to think a little bit about the purpose of thinking. We'll get into real quick, in a week or so, the critique, the critical part of critical thinking. We're going to see this in Plato. And it's really all about how our upbringing closes our minds. Of course, we have to have an upbringing, right? But the wrong sort of education, Plato thinks, is going to close our mind instead of equip us to really investigate and ask the kinds of questions we need to ask. So what is the purpose of thought? We'll get to the critical part later, but what is the purpose of thinking? First, let me draw attention to something. When we talk about purpose, we gotta investigate that. How can we even know? Okay, purpose, teleology, this end-directedness, right? The idea that this thing exists to serve some kind of purpose, end-directedness. All right, teleology is super useful when it comes to critical thinking, but it's also questionable. How do we know there is any such teleology? How do we know there is any such purpose behind things? How do we know that eyes are for collecting light and hearts are for pumping blood. How do we know any of that? Is it even true? Is this an analogy? What's going on? Okay, serious questions. We're going to raise those questions a little bit later. I've got a lecture I want to share with you called, what is it? The problem of teleology and some solutions, right? So we're gonna explore teleology and how it's helpful, but also how it's questionable. Again, we want to understand. We want to understand things, but we need to understand the process by which we understand things. Teleology is super helpful for coming to a good understanding of the world around you, especially critique, right? Where you're not just listening and repeating, but you're figuring it out on your own. Purpose is such an important key for figuring it out on your own. Okay, so let me raise this question. What is the purpose of thinking? What is the goal of thinking? And I want to present two competing answers. One answer might say that the purpose of thinking is to discover truth. This is Plato's answer, more or less. Plato thinks we're after truth. The philosopher is after truth. And you should be like the philosopher, as Plato describes. But there's another answer. Thinking is for thriving. It's for living. It's for acquiring. It's for serving your interest. We think, we speak, we communicate, we model the universe partly to have an accurate understanding of the universe. We want truth. We want to know. But also, we think, we speak, we argue for our own benefit. Now, what happens if truth and our own benefit are at odds? Critical thinking, right? We got to be careful with that. Ideally, and we'll have to make this argument as we go, our thinking should be directed at truth. Why? Because pursuing our advantage without really understanding reality can often lead us into self-destructive paths. Okay, so even in pursuing truth, and Plato will make this argument, we'll see when we discuss the tripartite division of the soul. When we're pursuing truth first, our interests kind of line up. When we've got that right hierarchy in the soul, and what we're concerned with first and foremost, with how we use our words and how we use our thoughts, is having a reliable representation of reality. That is what's going to serve us the best. Maybe it takes some faith to do that. Maybe, there's some faith that wicked actions, lying, or pursuing our own best interest in a way that isn't aligned with truth, with reality, maybe thinking that that's going to be harmful. Maybe it takes some faith to believe that. But at any rate, what we'll be doing is carefully examining the realm of the knowable, looking at best practices for discovering truth about any given kind of knowable thing, and then asking ourselves what the limitations of those methods are.